Hello fellow humans and welcome to the T25 Pilot and also the T26 Eagle, which I'm going to do after this one. Now, they're in a bundle for 7,000 gold, which might seem like a great deal considering, for example, a AMX M49 is sold for 8,000 gold. However, I would rather have one amazing tank rather than two relatively meh ones, and in this case, especially with the Pilot. Now, there is not much to say about the Pilot because the Pershing is better. So the tech tree counterpart, so there's absolutely no reason to actually buy this tank unless you really want to downgrade. You pay for a downgrade. But the Eagle is very much interesting, so definitely stay tuned for that if you want to know more about this. Because, I mean, the Eagle is 2,500, which I think is a somewhat fair price for this vehicle. However, only get it if you enjoy something like the Pershing and you want to have it a tier lower. Because obviously, ideally, credits are made at tier 8. Every credits that you don't make at tier 8, you're losing out on your time. You're losing time, you're losing value if you don't make your credits at tier 8. It's that simple. So, let's get into the T25 Pilot first, and then let's talk a bit about the Eagle for those that are interested and those that might want to have it, just to have it. Now, the armor on this thing doesn't exist. It is more of a Leopard 1 type armor where you can get bounces off the gun mantlet and stuff like that, but the rest of it is pretty much just paper, which, yeah, is also somewhat similar on the Pershing, even though the Pershing does have a bit better turret armor. The Pershing also has 300 DPM more, so there's that. 192mm penetration, which is completely unacceptable for a tier 8 in 2022, and only 225 half damage. Now, obviously, the Pershing only has 180, however, it does have 286 on the APCR, so it does balance it out there a lot better. Aim time and the accuracy are relatively good. 10 degrees of gun pressure obvious as well. The mobility isn't the greatest, however, for a essentially light tank armored vehicle, it's too slow. So let's have a go. Yeah, I had to disable the success booster there real quick because you don't want to do it in this thing. Now, 243mm of APCR penetration. The T34 has 246 standard penetration, which means this thing is absolutely horrible for making crits. If you have bad standard penetration, the tank is not good for making crits, because obviously the more APCR you fire, the more expensive that's going to be. Which means, say that there's the turret armor, and there's also the lag, and there's the lemming train. So the worse your standard penetration is, the worse your tank is for making credits. So this thing is completely useless for making good credits. And I would absolutely not recommend a tank like this for a task like that. And okay. T49 is probably going to die. So, yep, there we go. WZ 120. He's not a good player. I can immediately see that already by the way he's behaving and the way he's driving. But yeah, you don't want to have this tank to make crits, because you're not going to make as many as you get in the AMX M49 or even the T34 as well. The T34 is also a relatively good tank to make credits with. So, what do you do with this tank instead then if it's not for making credits? Well, yeah, you spend 4,500 gold on a worse Pershing, on a more challenging Pershing. Now, obviously, it can work well for you if you are a good player, and any tank can do well. But that doesn't mean that they must, and in this case, that is very much not the case, because obviously, well, you can outperform a tank significantly. A tank is still limited by what it is, and this thing is a turd. So, yeah, that is not very great for it. And especially because it's not good for making crits. It's not good for new players because it is very challenging to play, because it doesn't have that many upsides. You know, it is mediocre at everything and not really good at anything. That does come to mind here. It does have the 10 degrees of gun depression, which is one of the better factors, but then again, 10 degrees of gun depression alone is not going to make it a competent tank. So let's try and keep shooting the E75 here a bit if we can. 2,200 damage. That is somewhat expected with a thing like this, so not too bad, I guess. And I have no idea currently where the other heavy is, but he's back there somewhere, so that should be fine. And now we're gonna, never mind, not work on the camera because I am down. But yeah, 3,000 damage, and I'm dead. There you go. As you can see, it does work well, but 1,000 assistance damage as well, which is not too bad. So, what you can see with this thing, It can work well, but that's me, that's not the tank. And now we go for the Eagle. Same alpha damage, same gun depression, roughly same mobility, 300 DPM less, and significantly less penetration at 160 on the AP rounds. However, in this thing you can face tier 6s, so that is not that big of a problem. Obviously in a tier 8 battle, you're not going to pen anything. Or very little. Again, bad standard penetration is very bad for premium tanks. That is why a tier 34, after 7 years in the game, is still very relevant, because it just has excellent standard penetration, which does allow you to farm a lot of credits because you don't have to fire a lot of premium rounds while still having high alpha damage and stuff like that. And to the AMX M49 as well, because that thing also has, I think, 232 standard penetration, which is definitely good enough, or more than good enough to make that work. Now, ideally, you don't want to have 190, because then you're not making any crits at tier 8. Now we're at tier 7. We're at tier lower, which is not great, because obviously the credit coefficients tend to be lower as well. There are a couple of exceptions, like the Shinobi and the Angry Connor, but those are tier 5 and those don't matter. So, ideally, you want to make all your credits at tier 8. Again, this thing, only get it if you actually want to have a challenge, because, well, the T25 Pilot is simply invalid. This thing can be a fun little tank to play, if that is something you thought the T20 doesn't have enough armor. If you think the T20 doesn't have enough armor, get the Eagle, I guess. But overall, again, it's a tier 7. I wouldn't recommend it for making creds. I wouldn't recommend it to a new player at all. I would at that point definitely recommend the MX M449. Now, it might be a lot more expensive, of course. But if you play a tank for 10 battles for 4,000 gold, you paid 400 gold per battle. If you play a tank for 200 battles for 8,000 gold, you paid a lot less per battle, right? And that's the point here. You want to have a tank that is going to be better for longer. And that is the case with neither of these two. Because this one doesn't make the credits. The T25 Pilot simply doesn't have any outstanding qualities about it. So, just ignore this bundle, I guess. And I mean, I could have said this at the beginning of the video and cut it short, but yeah, sorry about that, I guess. And if you did skip to the end, then welcome back, and don't forget to like and subscribe. As always, really appreciate it for all your support, and also special thank you to the members, as always. And with that said, just ignore the bundle. Goodbye.